This is a true story about dreams, perseverance, and fatherly love. The protagonist, Chris Gardner, went through the toughest trials of his life: business failure, his wife leaving, homelessness, and raising his young son alone. Despite all the hardships, he never gave up hope. Now, let's step into his story, feel his life and struggles, and witness his ultimate success and happiness. Hello, my name is Chris Gardner. Like many others, I had dreams when I was young, and a warm family. I wanted to give my family a better life, so I decided to start a business selling medical equipment, a machine that could measure bone density. I invested almost all my savings to buy many of these machines. At first, I was very confident, thinking it would change our lives. So every day, I carried the machine from one hospital to another, hoping to sell at least one. But reality wasn't as good as I imagined. Almost no one wanted to buy the machine, and business was very bad. Our family's financial situation worsened, and the pressure increased. My wife, Linda, had to work 2 jobs to cover the family's expenses. Every day, we were exhausted, and the arguments became more frequent. One day, I was standing in front of a building when I saw a man in a suit driving a sports car. I asked him, "What is your job?" He said, "I'm a stockbroker." My heart lit up. I could try that too. That day, I mustered my courage and walked into the brokerage firm, wearing my only decent clothes and holding a bone density scanner. After getting the internship application form from HR, I rushed downstairs because I realized the scanner had been taken by a homeless girl I'd entrusted it to. I chased her all the way to the subway station, but I was too late. The machine was gone. Fortunately, when I later returned to submit my application, I unexpectedly found it again. A month later, I waited patiently downstairs at the brokerage firm for the HR manager to appear. Finally, he showed up, but just as he was calling a taxi to leave. I mustered my courage and ran up, saying, "I'm going the same way. Can I share this taxi with you?" He glanced at me, hesitated slightly, and finally nodded. In the taxi, he was playing with a Rubik's Cube. I asked to try it and solved it before he got off. He stared at me, surprised, and said, "Good job." After he got off, I realized I didn't have enough money for the fare, so I had to run away. During the escape, I lost the scanner again. When I got home, I found that my wife had left with our son. The house was empty, only I was left. At that moment, I felt lonelier and more helpless than ever. Just then, the phone rang. It was an interview notice for the day after tomorrow. A glimmer of hope was rekindled in my heart. I rushed to the kindergarten and brought my son back with me. The day before the interview, the landlord came to demand rent. I begged him to give me a few more days. He looked at me silently, sighed, and finally agreed to give me 1 more week on the condition that I help him paint the walls. However, because of unpaid fines, I was detained by the police for one night. The next day, covered in paint and with messy clothes, I still rushed to the interview. The interviewers doubted my capabilities, but I responded with honesty and humor, which won them over. I was granted an internship at the brokerage firm. This internship was unpaid and highly competitive. Out of 20 interns, only one would eventually secure a full-time position. Every day I had to call clients, record data, and prepare reports. While making calls, I constantly calculated my time, hoping to get more done within the limited hours. Every time I made a call, I tried my best to remain professional and patient, but most clients were cold and repeatedly rejected my products. I was rejected over and over, and each time it was frustrating. But I told myself, keep going, the opportunity will come. During lunch breaks, I would spend just a few minutes reviewing stock knowledge, taking notes, and familiarizing myself with procedures. To save time, I tried not to drink water at work and never put down the phone while making calls. To save money, we moved to a cheaper apartment. Later, I sold all the bone density scanners I had, thinking life would slowly get better. But unexpectedly, a tax notice completely disrupted my plans. The money in my bank account was directly withdrawn, leaving only $21.33. Because we couldn't pay the rent, the landlord threw mine and my son's belongings outside the door. From that day on, we no longer had a permanent place to live. Sometimes we stayed in shelters, and other times we had to sleep in public restrooms at subway stations. I remember once holding my son while sleeping in a cold subway restroom, listening to the rumbling trains and watching his sleeping face. I silently told myself, no matter how hard it gets, I have to keep going. Life in the shelter was not easy either. Every evening I had to take my son to line up for a bed. Beds were limited, and if we were late, we had no choice but to sleep on the floor or outdoors. At night, my son and I squeezed onto a tiny bed, trying to make him comfortable while he slept. I would tell him stories and lull him to sleep. Even in our hardship, I tried to stay optimistic in front of him. When he said, "I have a good dad," it gave me endless motivation. To survive, I even sold blood at the hospital to buy parts, repair broken scanners, and resell them to ease our immediate financial pressure. That day, I sat in the hospital hallway holding my son, and he gently held my hand and said, "Dad, we will be okay." Looking into his small eyes, tears nearly fell. I knew I had to try even harder. The 6 months of internship finally came to an end, and my tense yet hard-working efforts had not been in vain. In the final assessment, I stood out from 20 interns and became the only one to be hired. When my supervisor told me the news, I could no longer hold back my excitement, and tears welled up in my eyes. I walked out of the office building, blending into the crowd, feeling an immense sense of relief and joy, and couldn't help but applaud myself. I immediately ran to the daycare and held my son tightly in my arms. I knew that we had finally found true happiness. At that moment, I realized that all the hardships and efforts had been worth it. Afterward, I walked hand in hand with my son along the seaside. Sunlight shimmered on the sea, and a gentle breeze brushed our faces. I felt an unprecedented sense of peace and contentment. Life had been so hard, but at that moment, I truly felt that happiness had finally come knocking on our door. Later, I truly became a stockbroker and founded my own company. All the hardships were rewarded. Life tells me, as long as you don't give up, happiness will surely come.